All right. Hello and welcome to our virtual open house for the Great Salt Lake and Utah Lake Comprehensive Management Plans and for the Mineral Leasing Plan. My name is Dan Adams, and I'll be helping facilitate and moderate our virtual meeting tonight. I'm just going to take a quick minute here in the beginning just to talk a little bit about the functionality of the virtual meeting, and then I'll turn it over to Ben Steierman from Forestry Fire and State Lands to kick us off. And so just a couple things that during this meeting, you won't be able to turn on your camera or microphone. With Zoom webinar, the way for you to engage and participate is through the Q&A tab that you'll see down at the bottom of your screen. So throughout the presentation, if you have a question or comment, we invite you to please go there and type in that question or comment. And if there's something that's simple that we can just type a quick response, we'll do that during the meeting. But if you have a question that you would like our panel of the project team here to answer at the end of the presentation, we'll go ahead and go through those questions and answer as many of those as we can. And so we'll get you to that point. If you also have any questions about functionality and something's not working right, also use that Q&A tab there at the bottom. Okay, I'll turn it over to Ben Steierman.
All right, thanks, Dan. My name is Ben Steierman. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and oversee the lands and minerals aspect of the division. Thank you very much for joining us tonight or watching this meeting, as I understand it's being recorded. So welcome future viewers. So we wanted to take a minute just to describe what this plan is and why we're doing this update. So we're updating both the Great Salt Lake Comprehensive Management Plan, the Utah Lake Comprehensive Management Plan, and the Great Salt Lake Mineral Leasing Plan. And the last time the Utah Lake Plan was updated was in 2019. We normally do these every 10 years, and that's been on the docket to update for some time. And the Great Salt Lake was updated last in 2013. So both are ready to be updated. We're excited to go through this as we think there's a lot of changes that have happened in the last decade that are relevant, and then also a lot of attention to these really important resources that we'd like to highlight and things that we have learned that we'd like to apply to the management of these important resources. So in general, I just want to remind folks, we're really kicking off this process now. This is the scoping. This is where we're going to understand where you all think we can do better, where you think we're doing good, where you think there's opportunities for collaboration, where you think those pain points might exist. We have a great survey that's open right now where we really want to hear from you to help guide the process. And we're going to be looking to other agency partners, to the public, and really to all of the folks who know these resources best to understand how we can manage them to their full potential. These resources are managed under the public trust doctrine, which I wanted to take just a moment to explain, because what that means is these lakes, these streams that are sovereign lands in the state of Utah, were navigable at the time of statehood. And what that boils down to is that it's somewhat like the air that we breathe. This land can't be privatized. It belongs to you and to me and to the rest of the state. So this is truly your land. We just manage these resources. So we want to make sure we're responsible and reactive and proactive and accountable to you, the public, those joining and participating in this. So we look forward to hearing your opinions on how we can better manage or improve our management on your lakes. Historically, these plans have looked a lot like a zoning or planning document. They go over important ways that we may be able to utilize these lands. They also serve somewhat like an environmental assessment. They kind of go over the existing conditions and show what where the lake has significance both ecologically and where those sensitive areas exist. We have a lot of aspirations to improve how the plans are used. My vision for these plans are that we will take them a step further than this zoning and planning document. So not only will we describe what's allowable or potentially allowable or things that need further investigation, we'll also discuss opportunities for how we can better collaborate with our partners to find those intersections where our management can complement the management that, for example, wildlife resources or even our non-governmental partners are undertaking. We have great partners in all sectors, and so we want to find out where those opportunities exist. We also want to be reactive and proactive to lake conditions, both on Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake. So, Great Salt Lake, it's fairly simple to, we have lake elevations and salinity that drive a lot of the function of the lakes. So we want to be able to monitor those closely. And when we reach certain criterias, we want to have some actionable items that we can be doing to prevent further, decline or degradation, things that we can do to be proactive and improve those scenarios. Same with Utah Lake. I think there's a lot that we can be doing to manage and offset some of those impacts that we see from fluctuating lake levels and the lake coming up and down throughout the water year. So those are a lot of things that we would like to address in the plan. But again, I'm really excited to be able to introduce the topic tonight. I really hope that we get a lot of participation from the public and from our partners to guide us through this process. It is somewhat of a long process, so we'll look forward to hearing from you and then implementing those and being able to put that into a draft form and receive more feedback. So please stay engaged through the process. And with that, I'll introduce Jeff Denblecker, who can introduce the rest of the planning team. Thanks for having me tonight.
Great, thanks, Ben. Yes, we are excited to get this project started. And as Ben said, there's been a lot of planning, a lot of work has been done on this lake, these two lakes for quite a while. And I'm excited to engage with you to make sure we have all of the information needed for the planning, make sure we have that right as a foundation, but then also consider what the issues are, what the concerns are, and to be able to craft effective management strategies going into the future. So here in the room here, we have a number of folks from our team. We have Emily Hawley, who's from Forestry, Fire and State Lands. She's a planner with Forestry, Fire and State Lands, and our project manager. We have Holly Wood from Langdon Group. Dan Adams, you saw just a little bit ago, also from Langdon Group. They're helping us with the public participation. And then I have Kayla Worthen from Jacobs Engineering, also helping us. She's a biologist helping us with developing the plan. We also have a number of other staff who will be working with us throughout the next year. So if you engage in some of the meetings, you'll probably see a number of other faces. But right now, we're here to help kick this project off. So one thing, one word that Ben just used, collaboration, I think is important. And wanted to highlight that here with this slide is that I think I've been working with various agencies on a number of different issues with Great Salt Lake for almost 20 years now. And then when I look back, I think today is just a new paradigm and things have improved significantly from where we were 20 years ago. When I first started, it was difficult to share information across agency boundaries. There was very little that was understood about the lake, its ecosystem, its uses. We had a lot of agencies doing a great job doing their job, the job of their respective agency. But considering Great Salt Lake as an overall system just wasn't done a whole lot. And I think what we've done in the intervening 20 years here is we've grown to understand the complexity of the system and how all of the different components work together to create significant value for us and the communities around Great Salt Lake, for the industries and the ecology that depend upon the lake. And I think also just the system of organizations that work together to be able to manage and protect the resources of the lake. And so I think what you see here, so effectively, I think as we look at Great Salt Lake, what we see is a story of collaboration. I think there's been significant success over the years because of that collaboration. And the graphic you see here, I'm not going to read through all of this, but it's just one depiction, artist depiction of all of the different efforts that different agencies have been doing just in the last 5 years, working together to develop a strategy for the lake. I think the two predominant bars, though, the widest bars you see there, the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan, is being led by the Division of Water Resources. And then the Great Salt Lake Comprehensive Management Plan and Mineral Leasing Plan is being led by Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. And those two studies, those two divisions have been working closely together to consider what needs to be done to develop these plans. And then most importantly, I think how they can both inform the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's strategic plan that you see there on the right. And then all of the intervening studies that you see in between really are to help inform, to help us make better decisions going forward. And I think Utah Lake also has a similar story, but I think it's one that's developing at kind of a breakneck pace. There's a lot of different groups that are working on the lake right now. Actually, next week there's a Utah Lake Symposium intended to bring people together to enhance collaborative efforts on the lake. But here you see on this graphic, the Utah Lake Comprehensive Management Plan is not intended to work by itself. It's intended to really build upon the work that other agencies are doing to be able to manage the trust resources that we all have in Utah Lake going forward. So I think, you know, the need, Ben touched on this too, is that, you know, with Great Salt Lake, the last comprehensive management plan was done in 2013. And if you think about the change that we've seen just in the last 10, 11 years, it's significant. Just in the last 5 years, we've seen entirely new landscapes showing up because the lake has been dropped. These are microbialites that have typically been underwater. We now see them, and we're understanding and learning a lot more about them as we go. We've seen significant new attention in the media regarding the challenges of Great Salt Lake and what that means to the communities around the lake. We've seen a lot of interest in lithium. I think just our overall global economy moving towards more electric vehicles, as an example. We need lithium for those batteries, and Great Salt Lake has lithium. And so there's a lot of interest in how we can safely extract lithium as well as other minerals from Great Salt Lake. Salinity has been in the headlines here in the last few years, where salinity in the south arm of Great Salt Lake was at high levels, and the state needed to work with its partners to come up with strategies to mitigate those impacts. And then most recently, I think we've seen a lot of discussion just with development around the shoreline of the lake. And so with all of these changes, it really has created a new paradigm, and which requires a new plan, or I guess another way we've been putting it as a new playbook. How can Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, given the current conditions, given the partnerships that they have, given the mandate that the division has, how can they best manage these resources of the lake for you? And Utah Lake also has seen significant change, especially since 2009. We've seen since 2009, a lot of work has been done to reduce the carp populations of the lake. We've seen a lot of work to improve the populations in June suckers. And actually just in the last year or so, we saw the June sucker delisted or reduced down to a threatened status. Which is a testament to the collaborative efforts of the agencies and the stakeholders, and how can we best protect and manage these resources. We saw a lot in the news with regard to harmful algal blooms in Utah Lake. We saw a lot of discussion and attention placed on proposals to build islands out in the lake. We saw the formation of the Utah Lake Commission. We've seen in response to the harmful algal blooms, the Division of Water Quality has expended significant resources in studying the ecology, the water quality of Utah Lake to come up with solutions to protect it. And even today, we're seeing new proposals for development around the lake. And I think most significantly here in the recent past is the formation of the Utah Lake Authority to help provide leadership in how can we best protect, how can we manage the lake going forward. So there's a few key definitions. Ben used some key terms here, and I'm not going to read through these word for word, but I think that some of the key words are just sovereign lands. These lands have special status. They have a special legal status, And in terms of the study that we're doing, those sovereign lands lie below the meander line of Great Salt Lake and the ordinary high water mark of Utah Lake. These are the lands that the Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands is tasked to manage. And so though that this is our study area is below these lines, these boundaries that represent the outer boundary of each lake. Public trust refers to the public trust doctrine. And as Ben said, what this means fundamentally is that this is your lake. The state needs to manage these resources to balance all of the uses that we see in the lake, and which leads right directly into the multiple use sustainable yield principles. By law or by code, Forestry, Fire and State Lands needs to balance all of these uses for each of these lakes with sustained yield principles. So when we look at all of the uses, it's not easy to balance these uses, but we want to make sure that the resources of these lakes are used in a sustainable way for future generations. So there's a lot of questions that we fielded even so far as we've just been started. And I think one key thing that is important is to make it clear as to what the CMP or the comprehensive management plans are not. These plans do not have a single focus, such as water management up in the watershed, water rights, or wildlife management. The intent is not to duplicate or replace the work of the others. What we're really trying to do is bring those together. And so we have a playbook for how forestry can navigate and coordinate all of these different efforts. The CMP is going to describe the division's responsibilities for managing the sovereign lands. It's going to outline strategies and decision support tools that will guide division staff in managing the resources, but also importantly, as I think, is to make sure that those principles, those strategies are transparent to the public, so that when people want to do something in the lake or with the lake, that there's a clear playbook in terms of how they can navigate, how they can interact with the state to be able to do that. So fundamentally, I guess at the bottom there you see it's going to help tell us what we can and can't do in the lake. And on the right hand side, you see a map of Great Salt Lake. This is an example from the 2013 plan, but just to help provide zoning, it's kind of a zoning map showing us what we can and can't do in different parts of the lake. And so as proposals, as applications come in from the public, from industry, Forestry, Fire and State Lands needs to evaluate each of those. And they need to issue permits, leases, and easements to allow those. But those are based upon land use classifications that are defined in these comprehensive management plans. And so you can see here, there's everything from managing to protect existing resources, some where things are complete, open for consideration, to where we're really needing to protect those existing resources and make sure we're very careful with those and in those areas. All to help guide Forestry, Fire and State Land staff in how to best manage and make the best decisions in managing the resources. So the purpose of these plans, including the mineral leasing plan for Great Salt Lake, is to guide them, to guide their partners in how we can best manage and appropriately use each of the lake's resources. They will define the management goals, objectives, and strategies, to ensure that the ecological health, the scenic attributes, the extractive industries, recreation opportunities can all be balanced and maintained now and into the future. And I think one of the key things that's part of developing these plans is that we need to make sure that we're coordinating very closely with other agencies, but also listening to you, the public. After all, as we've said, this really is your lake, and we need to make sure that we're identifying what the issues are and making sure that we can develop management strategies for those. You may be familiar with what we call the lake level matrix. This is just an example of a tool that was developed as part of the 2013 Comprehensive Management Plan for Great Salt Lake. And it's something that we intend to update this time around for Great Salt Lake and to develop something similar for Utah Lake. And what this very complicated diagram does This just helps us understand, what is the status of the different uses, the different resources at different lake levels. And it's not telling us what to do, it's just helping us understand what the potential impacts or ramifications are when we have different lake levels. And as we've learned here just in the last 5 years, with lake level, we also see that salinity is very important on Great Salt Lake. And so the complexity of this matrix, which is just looking at water level, is compounded when we also start to overlay salinity onto this as well. And so those are some of the challenges we'll be working through as part of these plans. We'll also be updating the mineral leasing plan for Great Salt Lake. And this is really also providing a playbook for the division as well as for industry to understand what the available resources are, how they can best lease and efficiently develop the mineral resources of the lake. And so this is going to also require significant interaction with other agencies, with industry, to make sure that the procedures, the rules are clear. And I think that this is a great example of where a lot has been happening with Great Salt Lake in the last 5 years. Just in the last 2 years, each of the last 2 years, we've seen significant legislation providing new rules for mineral leasing at Great Salt Lake. And so the division has been trying to rapidly respond to that and develop new rules that incorporate those new laws and to provide guidance to industry. And so what this mineral leasing plan will do is to bring all that together to hopefully make it clear and transparent as to what the path forward will be or is. So one of the challenges that we see, as I said, that we've seen significant change in the last 10 years. I mean, even in the last year, we've seen significant changes. And so how can a plan adapt with that change? We don't want a static plan that is irrelevant or somewhat irrelevant, even a week or a month after we publish it. We want the plan to be able to continue to adapt and provide guidance going forward. And so, yes, Ben would love us to create a crystal ball so he can keep ahead of everything. But the reality is that when we're managing complex resources like this, is we really have to identify the things that matter, the things that we can control, and then identify the things that we have to prioritize and focus upon. And so those are some of the things that we're hoping to hear from people on, are what matters, and what are some of the things that we should focus on as we develop these plans. And so as we do that, one of the key things that we see with adaptive action planning in our industry is that some of the key things that it's important is that this is a continuous process. We don't just create a plan and then we're done and then we just implement it. That plan is going to continue to adapt going forward. And so we need mechanisms to be continually aware of how things are changing, what is happening. We need to be able to evaluate what that really means to the division and to its partners, what it means to those resources, and then what are we going to do about it? The division sees new proposals coming in that there's just really no way we can predict the creativity. People are very creative and come up with great new ideas all the time. And so we need a process that allows the division to have flexibility to be able to adapt and to be able to respond to those proposals as they come. And so as we go through our 3 phases of the project here in the next 12 to 16 months, we'll be identifying challenges and goals, we'll be mapping strategies, all to be able to enable the outcomes that we all want and desire for these 2 lakes. And then as things are implemented, we'll just see this continuous process of making sure we understand how the lakes are changing, understand what that means to people, to the uses, and then be able to adapt as we go. One tool that we've already developed and plan to continue to improve upon are websites for each of the 2 lakes. What you see here on the screen is just the homepage for the Great Salt Lake website. This is intended for the Great Salt Lake Comprehensive Management Plan as well as the mineral leasing plan. Right now, there's a homepage with a lot of information about what these plans are, what this plan is intended to do. There's frequently asked questions on the next tab that allow you to kind of explore some of the questions we've been hearing. And then there's a public portal where you'll be able to participate in a survey, to be able to provide comments, to be able to understand where we have meetings and other ways for you to be able to engage. Another mechanism that we are hoping to develop as part of this tool, these websites, is to try to transition the comprehensive management plans, these plans from just being a paper product into something that's much more interactive online. And so what you see here is just a concept that we had just to look at the salinity of Great Salt Lake. It enables a user to draw upon data that other agencies are already reporting, to understand here's what today's salinity is as an example. Here's what people are forecasting the salinity might be later in the year. And then what does that mean for management strategies? What can the state do? What are some of the potential impacts on the different resources? Really to help try to provide them with more of a heads up management style, rather than having to react to, okay, we have this salinity now, this is what we're going to do now. Hopefully be able to forecast and be able to identify what they should start to do, preparing for the next 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years going forward. So in that way, they can adapt as we go. In terms of our timeline, right now we're in the issue scoping phase. This is where we have a number of meetings with the public, where we want to listen to you, to understand what's important to you. And then over the winter and spring, going into next year, we'll be developing the plan, documenting things, developing strategies with the intent that a year from now, we'll have a draft plans that will be made public for review. And that'll kick off a formal public comment process, where you can submit comments and where we will respond to those comments with the intent that we'd be able to finalize these plans by the spring of 2026. I think hopefully what you've heard from us so far is that this is going to take a lot of people. We can't do this alone. It's important that we hear from you, what's important to you, and be able to integrate that into our processes, so that we can make sure we can incorporate these things the first time around. We know that the lakes are going to change. We know that our watersheds are going to continue to change, and we're going to have to keep adapting. But the more that we can understand now, the better we can make these plans out of the gate. So just briefly, some of the frequently asked questions that we've had. This information's on the website as well. But we've identified some potential focus areas. These are issues, concerns, needs that have already been identified, and you can see it spans a pretty wide gamut. From the ecology, the water quality, to recreation, to wildlife use, to industry. And what we'd really like for you to do is to take the survey on our website to help us identify additional areas, things that we should focus on. And so there's a number of ways where we would enable your participation. Certainly this meeting is one. I'll show you some scheduled meetings here in a second for each of the 2 lakes, but please attend one of these meetings. We hope that these public meetings are not just going to be walking around looking at some posters and just interacting one-on-one. But what we really want to be able to do is explain what these projects are, and then be able to work in small groups and talk together about what is important to you. You can certainly email or mail comments directly to the division, to Emily Holly. You can go to our websites. The QR codes are there that you can go to. On each of these sites, there's a survey that you can participate in. We'd love for you to do that. That's a very important part of the information that we're using as we're starting now. We're getting a lot of great information already from those. There's a place for you to fill out a comment if all you want to do is submit a question or a comment online. And certainly you can also call the division with questions and comments. So for the public meetings, of course, today is October 17th. We have this virtual meeting. Our intent is to record, we are recording this, and we will be posting a link to this on each of the 2 websites. And then we have 4 other public meetings going throughout all of the counties around Great Salt Lake. And then with Utah Lake, a similar thing. What we hope to do there is have a public meetings in the southern part of Utah County and one in the northern part of Utah County. So with that, I want to turn it back to Dan.
Thanks. Jeff, we had a little bit of a glitch on the PowerPoint. Would you mind going back to that slide? Yeah, it's perfect. Just folks, Jeff referenced the 7 ways that you can participate. He also mentioned the QR codes, and we realized that slide didn't pop up. So if you would like to take a second and you can click on those, either of those QR codes that take you to the Great Salt Lake CMP website or the Utah Lake CMP website. And also, since this is being recorded, you can also go back and watch the recording again and go back to the screen. But anyways, just want to circle back and make sure we got that slide covered. We can go ahead and go forward in our slides. We also wanted to now open it up to see if you had any questions. We would love to hear any of those and answer them. If you remember, we want you to use the Q&A chat function. So sorry, earlier I think I mentioned chat. There's 2 different things. There's a chat function and there's a Q&A. We want you to utilize the Q&A. If you click on that, you can type in your question or comment. So we'll give you a minute here. If you have any questions you'd like to type in there, we would be happy to answer them. Okay, I see from Miranda, the comment here, a list of public meetings on the website needs to include times for the meetings. Currently, it doesn't. And so what are our times, Holly, on each one? 7. Each one of those meetings, all of them, are going to be from 5 to 7. And so hopefully that helps and answer that question, but 5 to 7 for each of those. I see another question here from Bonnie. Hi, all. What do you think the biggest changes are in the new approach? So Ben, any thoughts on that question from Bonnie about what do you think are the biggest changes in the new approach?
Hey, Bonnie, glad you could join tonight. The biggest change, in my opinion, is that rather than, acknowledge potential, like I'll use the example of the lake level matrix to use this example, I guess. Rather than just acknowledging that there's impacts that occur, we will look at those, different beneficial uses, those lake elevations, those things that we observe, and try to have management actions or recommendations for our division to follow. So those management actions may not be, so prescriptive in the sense that, we hit this elevation, this is what we go do, but things that we may consider. So I envision that as we hit certain lake elevations, we may want to start modeling or monitoring certain aspects of the lakes and start maybe ramp up our communications with our partners. Or, Bonnie, you sit on the Salinity Advisory Committee. I think that perhaps when we start to see salinities hit certain levels of Great Salt Lake, perhaps we start to have more frequent salinity committee meetings to see if there's any action that would need to be taken. So those are things that I think are maybe easy examples, but we want to dive a lot deeper and find out where those intersections or opportunities exist, to have more proactive management for these resources. I'd also say that when you look at the plans, they're going to be quite different. When you look at our old plans, specifically the Great Salt Lake plan, you look at a 400-page document, and I think everybody can probably tell you the story of Lake Bonneville, and it's an important story, but I don't know that we have to re-describe it every time we do a new plan. So my intention would be that we link to the resources that have expertise. It's not something that we have to update every 10 years. So I would imagine that we will have several links to outside resources where those, that information lies. And a lot of our information is going to be more of the, where the rubber hits the road, and hopefully more adaptive as well, things that can be updated more frequently than once every 10 years. Because as you know, Bonnie, there's a ton of research happening. And we're learning new things all the time. So we'd like to be able to implement those, what we learn as quickly as possible. So those are probably the most or the biggest changes you might see. But if you have any thoughts or ideas, this is a great time to fill out that survey and tell us if you think there's something else that we could also do better.
All right, great. Thanks, Ben. Hey, for everybody, if you look in the chat tab there at the bottom, Holly's added the URLs, the links to those websites in case you missed it on that slide we shared earlier. So welcome you to go to that. Okay, another thing here. John says, Ben mentioned a lake level matrix for Utah Lake is coming. Similar to how the Great Salt Lake matrix is overlaid by salinity, will the Utah Lake matrix be overlaid by the Utah Lake compromise judgment that governs flood control and lake levels, and also the water rights decrees?
Yeah.
Jeff, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes, the short answer is that it definitely will. We have a couple.
Oh, your camera, Jeff.
All right. Sorry, there we go. Yes, we will be incorporating those compromise and the water distribution plan for Utah Lake are foundation stones for how we manage water, especially in the Utah Lake system. So that really is the heart and soul of how we are managing Utah Lake, and will certainly be part of that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. All right, Max asks or shares here, the previous version of the elevation matrix had certain aspects of the ecosystem environment that had no data or data gaps. Have those data gaps been filled, or are those plans to fill those gaps? Jeff, you want to take that?
Sure. I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking with a lot of the experts for these lakes and building upon the knowledge that we have. What we've certainly learned a lot in the last 10 years with each of these lakes. And so we're hoping that we can update and fill those gaps, but also identify where we still have gaps. And so the intent isn't to do new science as part of this project, but really to help guide and shape where we should focus our efforts going forward. So, as Ben said, we recognize that there's a lot of intersections, interrelationships between different parts of the ecology with people who are using them, and even between the people who are using the lakes for different reasons. And so we are hoping, and our plan is to try to do the best we can to try to characterize that, so that that can inform the management decisions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, we have another two-part question here. For any new uses of water on the Great Salt Lake for which royalties will be paid, is there contemplated minimums? And the second part of the question is also, how would small possible proof of concepts be dealt with? Ben, you want to take that?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. And thanks for the question. I'm not entirely sure I understand the contemplated minimums, if you're referring to a minimum royalty or a minimum amount of minerals that must be produced. But I think that maybe a quick and easy way to answer that is we just finished our rules for new mineral development on Great Salt Lake, which will be a large portion of what our mineral leasing plan update will look like. But if you refer to the rules that just went through the formal rulemaking process at the Office of Administrative Rules, that addresses a lot of what development of new minerals or perhaps new processes to extract minerals looks like. I don't believe we have any minimum royalties or minimum amounts that someone has to produce. But that I don't know that I've really had that question before about you dealing with small amounts. There's also, if you're looking at it from like a research perspective, there's also, you know, avenues for that. So we if you're potentially looking at using the brines for mineral extraction, I'd be happy to chat with you about what a small operation might look like. And then as far as the possible proof of concepts for small mineral operations go, that was what we largely addressed in the new rule set, is what that looks like for new concepts to get implemented. HB 453 that was passed, also with HB 513, dealt a lot with this and then incentivized actually non-evaporative means of lithium extraction or other mineral extraction, you know, in an attempt to move away from evaporative technologies and hopefully be able to retain the water that makes it to the Great Salt Lake and not rely fully on evaporating that. So this new technology has to go through what we are referring to as a feasibility assessment. So there would be an opportunity for anybody that wants to prove up on a concept to go through a process and prove that it's not going to harm the Great Salt Lake in the process. That's really important to us. It was very important to the legislature, and I think we captured it well in the rules. So I'd invite you to take a look at the new rules as they're published. And if you have any questions or are interested in, you know, in any mineral development, we'd be happy to chat with you about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. Okay, folks, I think that is the end of our questions we've received so far. If you have other questions that come to your mind, again, we encourage you to reach out. Emily Hawley, as the lead for this project from FFSL, is her contact information is in the presentation, and she's a great resource and can help. If you also wanted to, Ben just talked about, he'd be happy to visit with folks. If you have any questions, you can do that through Emily. And that's what we have for the Q&A. Ben, any closing thoughts to wrap us up today?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank everybody again who's joining virtually, and those who are looking at this video after you know, we post this video and it's been recorded. But want to thank you for your time and interest in this important matter. I don't know if there's a more important document that I'll work on in my, you know, in the next decade of my career than these two management plans. So I think this is critical to vision the future of the lake. Again, I just want to remind everybody this is your lake, so we can't do it without your input. We really want to understand, you know, how you all view our division's management and those opportunities that we may have to do better. We're always looking and striving for ways to improve. I would also just encourage and invite you to please fill out that survey. We really want to hear from you. Getting that down in writing is going to be, again, critical for us to be able to start to formulate these ideas and ways to better improve our management of the lake and get those in our management plan. Also, I would like to just invite you to those in-person meetings. We would really love to have you there. There's going to be a lot more hands-on discussions and scoping there where we can get into the nitty-gritty and hear your ideas. And I'd love to meet you in person and make that acquaintance. So hope you can join us at one of the meetings, but please look and see which one is in your county, or come to all of them. We'd love that too. But anyway, we really appreciate you all, and thanks again for your time tonight.